Easter weekend, 1937, a time meant for renewal and celebration. But in New York City, it became the backdrop for a gruesome triple homicide that shocked the nation. Robert George Irwin, a troubled artist with a dark past, unleashed his fury in a crime that would earn him the nickname the Mad Sculptor. What drove this man to commit such heinous acts? Join me as we unravel the chilling story of the Beekman Hill murders and the twisted mind behind them. Background. Born to evangelist parents, Irwin was reportedly born in a tent on an old-fashioned camp meeting ground in Portland, Oregon. However, he was actually born in the Arroyo Seco Park near Pasadena, California on August 5, 1907. He was named for the nearby river and one of his father's favorite theologians, François Fenelon. Hence, he entered life as Fenelon Arroyo Seco Irwin. He later changed his name, much to the horror of his devout mother, to honor his philosophical idol, the agnostic Robert G. Ingersoll. His father was Reverend Benjamin Hardin Irwin, a nationally known figure in the holiness movement who had founded a racially integrated radical holiness denomination in 1898 at a national convention in legally segregated Anderson, South Carolina. He denounced as sinful everything from Coca-Cola to wearing ties. In 1900, a sexual scandal ended his career with the fire-baptized Holiness Church, and the senior Irwin went solo. In Canada, sometime during 1902, he married Robert's mother, Mary Lee Jordan of Texas, without divorcing his first wife. His father deserted the family before Robert was 3 years old, which left them impoverished. He soon idolized Lorado Taft, one of the leading American sculptors of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and later moved in with Taft's family. Then, working for a waxwork studio in Los Angeles, he carved commercial busts of President Franklin D. Roosevelt and other public figures. Dark path. Irwin was considered brilliant if erratic and at times violent. He tried to emasculate himself using a razor. He then consented to be committed to a state mental hospital where he initially stayed for a year. After his discharge, he moved into a New York City rooming house owned by Mary Gedeon. There, Irwin had become infatuated with her daughter Ethel, but his love for her was not returned. He underwent further mental illness treatment for 2 more years at Rockland State Hospital in Orangeburg, New York, and was released in the summer of 1936. By then, Ethel Gedeon had married George Cudner. Irwin then made a sculpture of Ethel with a cobra coiled around her neck. He enrolled as a student at the Theological School of St. Lawrence University at Canton, New York. However, he was expelled on March 18, 1937, 10 days before Easter, because of instability. He then rented for a single day a $2.50 a week room in a house on 52nd Street in New York City, several blocks from Mary Gedeon's rooming house at 316 East 50th Street. After considering and rejecting the idea of drowning himself in the East River, he instead walked to the Gedeon rooming house, the Easter weekend murders. On March 28, 1937, Easter Sunday, relatives arriving at the Gedeon's flat for dinner discovered the partially clothed bodies of Mary Gedeon and her younger daughter Veronica in Veronica's bedroom. Mrs. Gedeon had been strangled and stabbed, and Veronica had been strangled. In a nearby room, they discovered the body of Frank Burns, a deaf English waiter who had been stabbed many times. The ensuing police investigation revealed that around 3 a.m., Veronica had returned, intoxicated, from a date. 50 minutes earlier, Charles Robinson, an upstairs neighbor, had noticed the door to the Gedeon's flat was partially open and had closed it. This led detectives to conclude that the assailant had entered the apartment before Veronica arrived and waited for her. They also concluded that Brines was likely killed while he slept. Police attention focused initially on a driver, then on Mary Gedeon's ex-husband, Joseph Gedeon. By April 7th, however, their attention had shifted toward Irwin, in part because a sculpture carefully carved in ordinary bath soap was discovered at the crime scene. A nationwide manhunt for Irwin followed. State Inspector John Lyons was reported as stating of Irwin, "It makes no difference whether he committed 300 murders so far as the state is concerned. His psychopathic background shows he is insane." The manhunt, late June 1937. A pantry maid in Cleveland's Statler Hotel saw a picture of Irwin in a pulp magazine and noticed a resemblance to a bar boy who'd been working at the hotel for less than 2 months under the name of Bob Murray. He cleaned out his locker and disappeared soon after she asked him about his last name and whether he knew about Robert Irwin. Once again, the search for Irwin became the lead story on the front pages of daily newspapers nationwide. The next day, the Chicago Tribune received a call from someone claiming to be Irwin and offering to surrender for a price. But the Tribune dismissed the call as a prank. The William Randolph Hearst-owned Chicago Herald-Examiner, however, received a similar call, took it seriously, and made an arrangement under which Irwin would be paid $5,000 for an exclusive story, then surrender. After Irwin came to the newspaper's offices, its city editor, John W. Dienhart, and reporters G. Duncan Bauman and Austin O'Malley kept Irwin in a room in the Morrison Hotel in Chicago, working on the terms of a confession to the Beekman Hill murders that the newspaper would publish as an exclusive, while briefly shielding him from police. The Hearst companies then flew him to New York City, where he was turned over to police. At that point, famous New York criminal defense attorney Samuel Leibowitz, who had represented the Scottsboro Boys in Alabama and was reported to have saved 123 murder defendants from the death penalty, appeared as Irwin's attorney. In his published confession, he stated that he originally intended to kill Ethel Gedeon Cudner because she was the dearest object in the world to him, but that he accidentally killed the others instead. He explained that he went to the Gedeon's flat, expecting to find Ethel. He first struck, then strangled Mary Gedeon after she had asked him to leave. After her daughter Veronica arrived, he terrorized her, but strangled her only after she called him by name, showing that she recognized him. Afraid to leave alive a possible witness, but unaware of Burns's deafness, Irwin entered Burns's room, then stabbed him to death in his bed. Sentencing. After New York, police took Irwin into custody. He was indicted for 3 counts of first-degree murder. Contrary to Inspector Lyon's initial view that Irwin was insane, New York now found him normal. As Irwin's trial date approached in the fall of 1938, William A. Adams, warden of the Tombs Detention Center, said, "Irwin certainly isn't crazy now. He's as normal as any man in prison." Irwin's attorney Leibowitz, however, replied that Irwin was, is, and will be hopelessly insane. "He's crazy as a bedbug." Publicity again peaked as the trial date approached. One news account reported that not since the Harry K. Thaw murder trial had a case excited wider interest. Soon after a jury was selected, however, Irwin pled guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. James Wallace sentenced him to 139 years to life in prison, 99 years to life for the slaying of Burns, 20 years to life for the slaying of Mary Gideon, and 20 years to life for the slaying of Veronica Gideon. He was then sent to Sing Sing prison for a psychological evaluation, where prison doctors ruled him very definitely insane. On December 10, 1938, he arrived at Dannemora State Hospital. Death and reaction and aftermath. Irwin died of cancer in 1975 in Matawan State Hospital for the criminally insane in Fishkill, New York. Irwin's enduring legacy involves the way newspapers exploited his crime through sensationalist headlines and racy photos, culminating with a paid confession that nearly put him in the electric chair. In the immediate aftermath of the crime, New York Daily News publisher Joseph Medill Patterson responded to criticism of the sensationalism, editorializing that murder sells papers, books, plays because we are all fascinated by murder. He defended the news choice to give the story greater attention than President Roosevelt's failed attempt to pack the U.S. Supreme Court, explaining that perhaps people should be more interested today in the Supreme Court than in the Gideon murder, but we don't think they are. The story of Robert George Irwin, the Mad Sculptor, is a grim reminder of the complexities of mental illness and the tragic consequences when it goes untreated. His life, shaped by talent, obsession, and instability, raises haunting questions about the thin line between genius and madness. As we look back on this chilling chapter in history, we're reminded of the need for compassion, understanding, and early intervention in the face of psychological struggle. What could have been done to prevent such a tragedy? Are there lessons in his story that resonate in today's world? And how do we balance understanding with accountability when it comes to acts of violence? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Share your perspective, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me for more stories that explore the darkest corners of the human experience.